What happens when the person who raised you becomes a stranger overnight? When everything you believed about your life dissolves with a single piece of paper. In a small town in Ghana, a daughter searched through her late mother's belongings, expecting old photographs and faded recipes. Instead, she found a letter, sealed, hidden, and addressed to her. 20 years of silence, preserved in ink. Some secrets are kept to protect. Others are kept because the truth is too heavy to carry alone. But what happens when that weight is finally passed on? This isn't just a story about a hidden letter. It's a story about the sacrifices we make in silence, and the truths that find us when we are finally ready to hear them. Her name was Oma. And before she found that letter, she thought she knew who her mother was. Welcome to Stories by the King, where every story carries a heartbeat, and every truth demands to be heard. Now, before we begin, where in the world are you watching from? Is it dawn in Accra, evening in Nairobi, or midnight in New York? Drop your location in the comments below, hit like, and subscribe, because some stories need to be told. Now, lean in. Because what Oma discovered didn't just change her past, it rewrote her entire future. Oma had always known her mother as a woman of few words. Grace Mensah moved through life like water, quiet, constant, essential. She cooked fufu with precision, braided hair with gentle hands, and worked long shifts at the hospital without complaint. But there was something else about her mother, something Oma couldn't name. A sadness that lived in the pauses between her smiles. A heaviness in her eyes when she thought no one was watching. Growing up, Oma learned not to ask too many questions. Some doors, her instincts whispered, were meant to stay closed. The house felt different now that Grace was gone. It had been 3 weeks since the funeral, and Oma still couldn't bring herself to sleep in her mother's room. The scent of shea butter and lavender lingered in the hallways, as if Grace might walk through the door at any moment, carrying groceries from the market. But she wouldn't. The stroke had taken her suddenly, violently, in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon. No warning. No goodbye. Just an empty chair at the dinner table and a silence that swallowed everything. Oma's aunt, Auntie Efua, had been urging her to sort through Grace's things. "You can't leave it forever, my dear," she'd said gently, rubbing Oma's back. "And maybe you'll find some comfort in her memories." So on a humid Saturday morning, Oma finally opened the door to her mother's bedroom. The curtains were drawn, casting everything in golden half-light. Grace's Bible sat on the nightstand, bookmarked with a faded ribbon. Her reading glasses rested beside it, as if waiting for her return. Oma started with the closet, dresses in muted colors, sensible shoes, a collection of headscarves folded with care. Then she moved to the dresser, where her mother kept old photographs, expired passports, and brittle newspaper clippings. Most of it was familiar: Oma's baby pictures, Grace's nursing certificates, postcards from relatives abroad. But at the bottom of the drawer, beneath a stack of church programs, Oma's fingers brushed against something unexpected. An envelope. Cream-colored, slightly yellowed with age. And written across the front in her mother's unmistakable handwriting, "To Oma. Open only when I am gone." Her heart stopped. The word tilted. Oma pulled the envelope out slowly, as if it might dissolve in her hands. It was sealed with red wax, something her mother had never done for anything else. The weight of it felt wrong, too heavy for paper and ink. She sat on the edge of the bed, her hands trembling, and stared at her name written in her mother's careful script. 29 years she'd lived in this house. 29 years of shared meals, whispered prayers, and unspoken understanding. And yet, her mother had kept this from her. Hidden it. Waited until death would make the truth unavoidable. Oma's thumb traced the edge of the seal. Whatever was inside this letter, it was important enough to bury. Important enough to keep for 2 decades. And now, with her mother's voice silenced forever, This piece of paper was the only thing left that could speak. Oma broke the seal. The wax crumbled like dried blood, and she unfolded the letter with shaking hands. The paper was thick, expensive, the kind her mother would never have used for a grocery list. The handwriting was careful, deliberate, as if every word had been weighed before being written. My dearest Oma, it began. If you are reading this, then I am no longer with you. And it is time you knew the truth about where you came from. The room seemed to shrink. Oma's breath caught in her throat as she continued reading. You were not born to me, the letter said. I did not carry you in my womb or feel you kick beneath my ribs. But I have loved you more fiercely than any mother could love a child. You came to me on a rainy night in March, 20 years ago. You were 3 days old, wrapped in a pink blanket, and you were dying. Oma's vision blurred. The words swam on the page, but she forced herself to keep reading. Her mother, Grace, explained that she had been working the night shift at the hospital when a young woman stumbled through the emergency doors, soaked to the bone and barely conscious. She was bleeding heavily, her body ravaged by childbirth with no medical care. In her arms, she clutched a newborn baby, Oma, whose tiny chest struggled for every breath. The woman's name was Naomi. She was 17 years old. And she was dying. Grace had taken the baby immediately, rushing her to the neonatal unit while other nurses tried to save Naomi's life. But it was too late. The bleeding wouldn't stop. In her final moments, as her life drained away on a hospital bed, Naomi had grabbed Grace's wrist with surprising strength. Promise me, she'd whispered, her voice barely audible. Promise me you'll keep her safe. Don't let them take her. Don't let them know. Grace had promised. She didn't understand what Naomi meant, but she promised anyway, because that's what you do when someone is dying in your arms. Within hours, Naomi was gone. And Grace was left holding an infant with no name, no family, and no legal existence. She should have reported it. Should have contacted the authorities, filled out the paperwork, followed protocol. But something in Naomi's final words haunted her. Don't let them take her. Don't let them know. So Grace made a choice. She falsified the birth records, listing herself as the mother. She took Oma home, told her neighbors she'd had the baby in a private clinic, and raised her as her own. No one questioned it. No one suspected. And for 20 years, Grace carried that secret like a stone in her chest. The letter continued, and with each line, Oma felt her entire identity crack and reform. Grace explained that she'd tried to find out more about Naomi, who she was, where she'd come from, why she'd been so desperate to hide her baby. But there were no answers. Naomi had arrived with no identification, no belongings, nothing that could trace her back to a family or a home. It was as if she'd been erased from the world even before she died. Grace had kept a small box of Naomi's things, the blanket Oma had been wrapped in, a silver bracelet Naomi had worn, and a photograph. I've hidden it in the attic, the letter said. Behind the old sewing machine. If you want to know more about the woman who gave you life, start there. Oma's hands were numb. She read the final lines through a haze of tears. I know this will hurt you, my daughter. I know you will feel betrayed, confused, angry. But I need you to understand, I did not keep this secret to deceive you. I kept it because I loved you. Because I wanted you to grow up safe, without fear, without the shadow of whatever haunted your birth mother. You are mine, Oma. Biology doesn't change that. You are my daughter in every way that matters. The letter was signed simply, forever yours, Mama. Oma didn't remember climbing the narrow stairs to the attic. She moved in a daze, her body functioning on autopilot while her mind struggled to process the earthquake that had just shattered her world. The attic was dusty and cramped, filled with forgotten furniture and boxes of old clothes. She found the sewing machine exactly where Grace had described, tucked in the corner beneath a moth-eaten curtain. And behind it, a small wooden box, no bigger than a shoebox, tied with a faded ribbon. Inside, she found the blanket, soft pink cotton, now brittle with age. The silver bracelet, delicate and worn, with an inscription too faded to read. And the photograph. Omar pulled it out with trembling fingers and gasped. The girl in the picture couldn't have been more than 16. She had Omar's eyes. The same deep brown, the same slight upturn at the corners. The same high cheekbones and full lips. She was beautiful, smiling shyly at the camera, wearing a school uniform. On the back of the photo, someone had written, Naomi Aje, Form 3, St. Mary's Secondary School. Omar stared at the face of the woman who had given birth to her. The woman who had died to bring her into the world. And for the first time since reading the letter, she felt something other than shock. She felt gratitude. Not just for Grace, who had sacrificed everything to raise her, but for Naomi, who had used her last breath to ensure her baby would be safe. Whatever Naomi had been running from, whatever danger she'd feared, she'd loved Omar enough to entrust her to a stranger. To die knowing her daughter would live. Over the next few weeks, Omar began to search for answers. She visited St. Mary's Secondary School with the photograph, hoping someone might remember Naomi Aje. And miraculously, someone did. An elderly teacher, now retired, recalled a brilliant student who'd disappeared in her final year. She was so bright, the teacher said softly, her eyes distant with memory. But there were rumors about a relationship with someone powerful. Someone dangerous. One day she was here, the next she was gone. We never found out what happened. The pieces began to fit together. Naomi hadn't just been hiding from shame or poverty. She'd been hiding from someone who wanted to silence her. Omar never discovered the full story. Some secrets, she realized, die with the people who carry them. But she didn't need every answer. What mattered was this: two women had loved her enough to sacrifice everything. Naomi, who had given her life. And Grace, who had given her a life worth living. Omar returned to her mother's grave and knelt in the grass, clutching the photograph and the letter. "Thank you, Mama," she whispered. "For keeping me safe. For loving me. For being my mother in every way that mattered." The wind rustled through the trees, and for a moment, Omar could have sworn she felt a hand on her shoulder, warm, steady, familiar. She kept the box. She framed the photograph of Naomi and placed it beside one of Grace on her mantle. Two mothers. Two sacrifices. One unbreakable love. And though the truth had been hidden for 20 years, it had finally found its way home. Not to destroy, but to complete. Omar would carry both women with her now, Grace's strength and Naomi's courage, and she would live a life worthy of the love they'd both given her. Omar never learned every detail of Naomi's story. But she learned something more important, that love is not defined by blood, but by sacrifice. That the mother who raises you is as real as the mother who births you. Sometimes the truth doesn't come to destroy us. It comes to set us free. And a heart brave enough to seek the truth, even when it shatters everything, will always find its way to peace. If this story moved you, hit like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and tell me in the comments, would you want to know a truth that could change everything, or would you choose the comfort of what you've always believed? Subscribe to Stories by the King, where every truth demands to be heard, and every ending brings a lesson worth remembering. This is Stories by the King, where love transcends blood, and truth heals the deepest wounds.